Story. Imagine this scenario. A wealthy but arrogant man barges into your home, your fortress, insisting he's taking your wife for a few nights. How would you react? To top it off, he starts openly threatening you. My initial impulse was to tackle him and deliver a few punches to his arrogant face, but I opted for a different approach. As I wrapped up loading my tools into my pickup truck that Thursday afternoon, my mood wasn't the best. The client I'd been dealing with for the past fortnight seemed unable to make up his mind about the staircase project, constantly requesting alterations to the original plan. The latest change demanded this morning was so extensive that it necessitated dismantling a significant portion of the work already done. Furthermore, consulting with the architect and engineer was imperative, as accommodating the client's latest whim meant redrawing the structural plans. Consequently, the following day unexpectedly turned into an off day. I'm Kenneth Morrison, the lead artisan and proprietor of a small woodworking carpentry shop specializing in crafting top-tier staircases. My clientele comprises affluent mansion owners, hotels, restaurants, and offices, willing to shell out well over $50,000 for a bespoke artistic staircase. At 34, I'd been married to Daphne Tupper, 29, for 4 years. Daphne, a successful lawyer at Kramer, Boylan & Hendricks, a law firm specializing in commercial and intellectual property law. We hadn't yet started a family, primarily because Daphne wanted to establish her career first. Arriving home at 4:30 p.m., I was taken aback to find my wife's car in the driveway. Typically, she worked late on Thursdays to have a shorter day on Fridays. Entering through the back door, my usual path after a day at a construction site, I noticed a slight water pressure problem. It was unusual to find Daphne in the upstairs shower at this time, as she typically showered either in the morning or before bed. After swiftly changing into more comfortable clothes, I made my way upstairs to investigate why my wife was home so early on a Thursday afternoon. As I suspected, Daphne had recently finished showering and was now putting on some enticing black fishnet stockings. A brand new black dress lay on the bed, patiently awaiting its turn to be worn. Hey honey, why are you home so early? Did I forget something? Do we have plans tonight that slipped my mind? I asked. She looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen before, a hint of nervousness apparent, though she tried to conceal it. Letting out a sigh, she replied, "No, Kenneth, you haven't forgotten anything. I'm going out tonight, and you're not. I'll be away until Sunday afternoon, spending the weekend with Derek Kramer." What? What are you talking about? Is it a business trip or something? I inquired. No, Kenneth. It's not a business trip. Derek has a hotel suite reserved for him and me. I'll be back next week, but this weekend is for him, as she said, her tone defiant though her words seemed rehearsed. No, you can't. I don't want my wife spending a weekend with another man. What is this nonsense? I protested. Well, you better accept it, Kenneth, because that's what Derek wants, and I advise you not to cross him, as she chuckled. So you're willingly going along with this scheme? You expect me to just accept it, suppress my feelings, and let you go? And then you'll return as my faithful wife after this weekend? I retorted, my words dripping with sarcasm. I never said it's just for this weekend. Derek mentioned he wants it to happen occasionally, so yes, deal with it and keep quiet. Trust me, your life will be much simpler if you go along with it, as she stated firmly. We'll see about that. I won't tolerate this, Daphne. You better think about what you're doing because I won't let that arrogant guy control my life. If you think I'm a pawn you can manipulate without objection, you're in for a rude awakening, I warned. By then, she had finished getting ready for the evening. I went downstairs, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and noticed a Mercedes parking in front of the house. Mr. Smug himself emerged, walked up to the front door, and rang the bell. Kenneth, that's Derek. Will you go answer the door? She yelled from upstairs. I quickly punched in a code on the back door alarm panel, set up my cell phone for video recording, and put it in my t-shirt pocket to capture everything. Then I waited in the living room. I'd known Derek Kramer since Daphne started working for CBH 3 years ago. Our first meeting was at their office Christmas party. Derek, a man in his 40s, radiated a dominant aura. He seemed friendly with his partners and flirtatious with female employees and wives of male employees. However, around his male employees and the husbands of female employees, he was arrogant and disdainful. I took an instant dislike to the guy. Daphne descended the stairs with visible anger and opened the door while I observed from the living room, sipping my beer. She apologized for the delay, expressing uncertainty about her husband's manners, and then whispered something to Derek, though I couldn't discern her words. Derek, upon entering the living room, confronted me about an apparent issue with Daphne spending the weekend with him. His demeanor resembled that of a school principal addressing a disobedient child. Surprised by his audacity to assume authority in my own home, I firmly warned him to leave, my fists clenched. He laughed loudly with Daphne smirking beside him. He dismissed the idea of involving the police, confident they wouldn't intervene. Upon noticing my cell phone recording, he snatched it, attempting to stop the footage, failing due to the password lock. He angrily threw it onto the ceramic floor, which predictably won the confrontation. He asserted his dominance, declaring that Daphne would spend the weekend with him regardless of my feelings, emphasizing that my opinion was inconsequential. Any attempt to intervene would result in dire consequences, including the exposure of alleged criminal activities. He warned against upsetting Daphne or taking any action that could jeopardize his plans. I decided to act oblivious. It's highly unlikely that such information would become public knowledge. I've never been involved in money laundering or had any association with illegal materials involving children, I replied mechanically. That can be easily arranged. Uploading material to your computer is a simple task. I possess content that could quickly tarnish your reputation, he said. I chose to feign even more ignorance. Illegal materials involving children are, well, illegal. If you upload something like that to my computer, wouldn't that mean you're already in possession of illegal material? I asked innocently. That's the difference between you and me. Some things that are illegal for you are perfectly acceptable for individuals of power like myself who have the right connections. I highly suggest you stick to your working-class antics and refrain from bothering people of higher standing. Do you understand? I could hardly believe what I had just heard. Such dialogue would be excessive even in a comedy movie, yet the person in my living room was speaking earnestly. Oh, and one more thing. Please refrain from seeking revenge against me or Daphne. That includes attempting to retaliate by engaging with someone else closely. I want to avoid any potential transmission of infections from you to Daphne and then to me, all right? I won't ask Daphne to withhold lovemaking from you, at least not for now. Can't you see I'm not being unreasonable? Basically, if you cross any boundaries, I'll be aware of it, okay? Now let's go, honey. They returned to the front door. Daphne grabbed her overnight bag and left without saying goodbye or acknowledging my presence. Honey. He referred to my wife as honey. The entire situation was so surreal that I couldn't summon pure anger. My emotions were a mix of anger and astonishment. At that moment, I silently thanked the burglar who had broken into my house the year before I met Daphne. I was so disturbed that I had a comprehensive surveillance and alarm system installed, complete with motion-activated cameras and voice-activated microphones that could record everything in the house and store it in the cloud. I never let on to Daphne that the system could be set to recording mode while we were at home, ensuring she remained unaware when I activated it just before she opened the front door for that despicable individual. Simultaneously, I had initiated the recording on my cell phone, serving more as a decoy. My hope was that Kramer would notice it and figure out a way to turn it off. This would make him feel less guarded, and he might speak more freely, thinking he was no longer being filmed. I hoped this could be a valuable source of information for a potential divorce. The scoundrel gave me much more than I expected. The cell phone, now scattered on the floor, was actually my business cell phone. After dealing with a wealthier clientele, I quickly realized that providing them with my main cell phone meant being on call almost 24/7. A dedicated business cell phone allowed me to turn it off at the end of the day, and I could attend to messages the following morning. So at least I wasn't without a means of communication. I picked up my personal phone and called my business lawyer and best friend, Harry. 10 years ago, Harry Davenport became the husband of my elder sister, Jennifer. They enjoyed a blissful marriage until tragedy struck. 4 years into their union, Jennifer tragically drowned during a trip to Guadalupe with her 3 friends. Despite the heartbreaking loss, Harry remained an integral part of our family, earning our love and respect. 3 years after Jennifer's passing, Harry found love again in Christine. They tied the knot after a year of dating, and my parents, Daphne, and I were honored guests at their wedding. To this day, Harry and Christine remain like family to me. Recently, I found myself in a desperate situation and urgently sought Harry's help. After explaining the threats made by someone named Kramer and recounting the events of my wife's private weekend getaway, Harry immediately offered his support. He advised me to stay indoors, avoid contacting anyone, and switch off all communication devices, assuring me that he and Christine would arrive in an hour with dinner. Harry's advice provided much-needed reassurance. Reflecting on the past hour's events, I realized that Daphne, my wife, had been captivated by Kramer's power and charm. I never imagined she would forsake our love for him. It was a harsh realization that our bond wasn't as strong as I thought. My journey with Daphne began 5 years ago at a friend of a friend's birthday party. Despite being unfamiliar with most of the attendees, I struck up a conversation with Daphne, the sister of the birthday boy's army buddy stationed in Afghanistan. Our connection flourished, leading to a week of dating and eventual marriage the following year. During that time, I remained employed by Mr. Duncan, the founder of the small company where I worked. Craig Duncan was highly skilled in woodworking and well known locally. Despite his expertise in woodworking, his skills in accounting and management were lacking. While still in college, he had hired me as a part-time accountant to handle his bookkeeping. A few months into my role, Mr. Duncan secured 3 substantial contracts that demanded more time than he could spare. Although these projects were challenging, his clients insisted he take them on. Consequently, he asked for my assistance in the field. Initially, my tasks involved running errands, acquiring supplies, and providing support with handling larger pieces. My rapid learning and aptitude for the work became evident, and after overcoming the initial learning curve, I could independently handle simpler tasks or be a valuable asset on more complex projects. While pursuing my accounting degree, my passion for hands-on work led me to pursue an apprenticeship. After a few years, I earned certification and became Mr. Duncan's associate. Upon his retirement, my parents supported me financially, enabling me to buy out his share over a 2-year period. Despite being viewed as an uneducated shopworker by the lawyers at CBH, my company flourished, focusing on fewer but more lucrative projects. Over the preceding months, I had hired 2 assistants, and my net income and value surpassed those of many lawyers associated with my wife. Despite this success, even my wife was unaware of these details. My contemplation was interrupted by Christine and Harry, who arrived with Chinese takeout and beer. "Are you okay, Kenneth?" Christine asked, offering a warm hug. "I can't believe Daphne did that to you." "This is so unlike her," Harry reassured, giving me a supportive hug. "Don't worry, buddy. We'll sort things out. Let's have dinner, and then I'll take a look at your recording." I shared the details of Daphne's unwelcoming reception when I arrived home earlier that afternoon. After dinner, I grabbed my laptop and retrieved the files containing recordings from both the camera and microphone. Fortunately, the conversations were exceptionally clear. "I can't believe what I just heard," Harry exclaimed. Quite the arrogant guy," I remarked. "No, more like downright foolish," Harry replied. "I mean, this guy is what, 42 years old? That means he has about 15 years of law practice under his belt. He's not a newbie. He's so full of himself that it never occurs to him that sometimes you just need to keep quiet. Your clever trick of making him think he wasn't being recorded after he destroyed your cell phone worked like a charm. He took the bait and spilled everything we need to know." "Okay, But can I legally use it since it was recorded without his consent? I inquired. Absolutely. This is your home. You have the right to record whatever you want here, Harry reassured me. So I have nothing to worry about? Is that what you're saying? I questioned. And no, that's not what I'm saying. We need to be extremely cautious. I did some research on my way here. Chris was kind enough to drive and handle the takeout. It turns out our guy, Kramer, is the son of the founder of their law firm. You were aware of this, right? Harry explained, and I nodded. What you might not know is that his father, Marvin Kramer, had quite a reputation. He wasn't a great lawyer, but most of the judges in the area were his former college buddies. Knowing everyone personally made it easy for him to win most of his cases. Unfortunately, his son Derek has followed in his footsteps. That's what makes him dangerous. He has a wide network of friendly judges, and if he files a case, getting a judgment in our favor will be extremely challenging, no matter how illegal his actions are. Oh wow, so you're saying that no matter what I do, I'm in trouble? And not necessarily. Winning will be challenging, but not impossible. I have connections too, you know. The key is to gather enough evidence to make a strong case against him. I've got a plan. But you mentioned that the judges will always side with him, I inquired. Unless we take the case to criminal court. That's what we'll aim for. Our conversation was interrupted by a knock on the front door. A petite brunette was waiting on the porch. Hello, Mr. Morrison, she asked. Hi, Laura, come on in, Harry called out behind me. Kenneth, meet Laura Foster. She's the computer specialist at the private investigator firm we collaborate with. I took the liberty of reaching out to her after our earlier call tonight. We briefed Laura on the situation and had her review the recorded conversation, particularly the part where Kramer threatened to upload incriminating material to my computer. Laura paid close attention and then outlined the plan. All right, there are two possible scenarios. Either they come here during the day, likely with your wife's assistance, sit at your computer, change the date, and upload their content, making it appear as if it was done before Kramer's visit. If that happens, your camera system will capture everything. Just ensure it's in record mode before you leave for work in the morning, as she pulled a small gray box from her bag. The other option is remote access to your computer for their mischief. I'll install this module upstream of your modem to record anyone attempting to access your router and monitor what they try to upload or download. Take a few minutes to transfer all your personal or sensitive data and files onto a flash drive, then delete everything on your computer. The goal is to prevent them from accessing it. I'll assist with this just to ensure you don't unintentionally leave any hidden data on the computer, Laura explained confidently. It was evident that she was well versed in her field. Let's begin, Kenneth. Currently, your only evidence against him for blackmail is a recording. If you attempt legal action with just that, your case might be dismissed swiftly. Public opinion doesn't view blackmail as a very serious crime, and the judges he knows may support him. The ideal scenario would be if Kramer actually uploaded illegal material to your computer and then reported it to the police, alleging he has evidence of you possessing illegal content. In that case, we would have a trail indicating that all of this occurred without your presence at the computer. With the advance warning you received from Kramer, which you recorded, we would have enough evidence to build a robust case against him in criminal court. His judge friends would be less inclined to support him if he's involved in criminal activities, especially those related to illegal materials with children, and they would distance themselves from him. I find that disturbing and twisted, I remarked. Yes, but Kramer is just as twisted. One more thing, can you refrain from using your computer for the next few days? If Kramer proceeds with his plan and reports you, the police inspectors may want to check the computer records to confirm if anyone accessed the illegal files post-upload. If you avoid using it, the records will remain clean, which would be more advantageous for us. Also, ensure that your cell phone doesn't connect to your home Wi-Fi in the coming days to prevent them from using your phone instead of your computer. Laura installed the surveillance module and erased all sensitive information, including my company paperwork, from both my computer and cell phone. The module will forward us copies of all access requests. I'll reach out to Harry and you once we have some information. Best of luck, guys, Laura informed us before leaving. Alright, let's get back to more practical matters, Harry suggested. Kenneth, do you want to start the divorce process now, or do you prefer waiting until Daphne returns to see if things can be resolved? And no, I want a divorce as soon as possible. I can't stay married to someone easily influenced and corrupted by self-proclaimed powerful men. No hesitation. I want out. Alright, then I'll contact Claudia Milton tomorrow. She's the family law expert at my office, good, fair, and efficient. I'll ask her to reach out to you ASAP. You'll like her, Harry assured me. We continued discussing matters, and I provided Harry with the access code to my recording system for real-time updates and cloud-stored information. Christine and Harry departed around 11 p.m. I took a Zappa clone and fell asleep within half an hour. At 8:30 the following day, Claudia Milton called me after concluding a conversation with Harry, who had detailed the specifics of my situation. She requested my presence in her office by 11 a.m. During our meeting, Claudia expressed sympathy for my predicament. Upon learning about Derek Kramer's questionable reputation, she reassured me that since I had purchased the house before meeting Daphne and her name wasn't on the deed, the property remained mine. With no children in the picture, the divorce proceedings would be straightforward. Concerned about my company, I inquired about the possibility of being forced to sell it and divide the proceeds. Claudia summoned Harry to address my concerns, and he promptly assured us, "Don't worry, the marriage contract clearly stipulates that your company is solely yours, and she has no claim to it. They might attempt, but I double-checked, and legally they have no grounds." I concluded the meeting with Claudia at 12:30, handling financial matters as instructed. She took charge of the situation, assuring me that everything was under control and Daphne would be served the divorce papers at her office on Monday. Later, I replaced my damaged cell phone and spent the remainder of the weekend tending to the yard and catching up on my favorite TV series. Despite my ongoing anger towards Daphne, I struggled to fully comprehend the reality of the situation. While I anticipated mourning the marriage eventually, at that moment, my emotions were still too raw. The thought of Daphne returning home on Sunday loomed, and I debated whether to sleep in the guest room or assign it to her. Ultimately, I decided that it was my house, and she had walked out on me. Refusing to share my bed with her, I relocated all her belongings to the guest room. Subsequently, I purchased a new lockable doorknob and installed it on my bedroom door, keeping the key in my pocket. Upon hearing Derek's car arrive the following evening, I activated the surveillance system to record. I witnessed Daphne engaging in a prolonged French kiss with her boss before exiting the car and waving as he drove away. I was seated in the living room, apparently engrossed in a book when she entered. "Hi honey, how was your weekend?" she asked, seeming anxious despite her attempt to conceal it. I could tell that she wasn't as composed as she appeared. I refrained from acknowledging her, keeping my focus on my book. Fine, continue with your sulking. Derek was spot on when he mentioned you would act this way, suggesting you lack the intelligence to understand my needs or the maturity to accept your shortcomings. She ascended the stairs. As she left, I began counting. 123, Kenneth Morrison, what's going on? Did you put a lock on our bedroom? A correction, on my bedroom, I responded calmly. All your belongings are in the guest bedroom. You'll be staying there until you find an apartment. What the hell? Wait until I tell Derek about this. This was not part of the agreement. Agreement? What agreement? I haven't agreed to any of your partner's nonsense. Either you stay in the guest room or leave. Perhaps Kramer's wife can accommodate you in her marital bed. She glared at me, not uttering a word, stormed into the guest room, and slammed the door. I followed her upstairs, yelling through the door. Speaking of agreements, what was in it for me, by the way? No response. I returned downstairs. After 15 minutes, my phone began buzzing with text messages from an unfamiliar number. "Oh, what's this I hear, cuck? You won't let Daphne into her own room? I thought I explained things clearly to you. Even someone like you should comprehend. For tonight, I'll overlook your childish crisis. Tomorrow, you'll prepare Daphne's favorite dinner and apologize for your behavior. If you behave the rest of the week, I'll permit her to be in bed with you next weekend. Fail to comply, and you'll discover my threats are genuine. Follow my instructions, no questions. Clear." I couldn't believe what I was reading. This person bordered on being heartless, delusional, and foolish. I chose not to respond, but took a screenshot of the conversation and sent it to Harry. Harry responded 3 minutes later, saying, "Incredible. This guy thinks he's top-notch, but he's just a first-rate idiot. Keep the conversation intact and don't bother replying to him." Kramer continued to send a couple more acknowledgement requests, to which I remained silent. Eventually, he stopped reaching out. I didn't encounter Daphne again that evening. I went to bed, securing the door and leaving the recording system on. I texted one of my assistants, informing him of my late arrival the following day. I waited until the morning after Daphne had departed before getting up and preparing for the day. While having breakfast, I downloaded the recordings from my system overnight. Daphne hadn't left the guest room until that morning. She had used the guest bathroom for a shower and left without eating breakfast. Surprisingly, she hadn't attempted anything with my computer. As expected, I received a text from Claudia Milton. "Hi Kenneth. Just confirming that the divorce papers will be served at CBH this morning." I informed Harry as well. "Have as good a day as possible considering everything." Before heading to the shop, I ensured my home system was still recording and set to send alerts to my phone if activated. I had an 11 a.m. meeting with the architect to discuss final modifications for my current client. I kept myself busy with minor tasks until the meeting. I anticipated a call from Daphne shortly after being served, but it never came. At 10:45, I messaged Harry, expressing surprise at Daphne's lack of contact. This means she's talked to Kramer about the divorce papers. They might already be scheming. I'll call Laura. Stay tuned, Harry replied. The meeting proceeded smoothly, allowing me to stay focused. Surprisingly, I spent the remainder of the afternoon maintaining my tools and tidying up the shop. At 3:12 p.m., I received an alert on my cell phone. I texted Harry that the show was in motion. He responded with a thumbs up. I accessed my system and watched the live events unfolding in my house. Daphne had returned, accompanied by an unfamiliar man. They entered our home office and activated my computer. Minimal conversation was exchanged between them. The man spent a few minutes decrypting my password, then inserted a flash drive into my computer and engaged in suspicious activities for about 10 minutes. Thankfully, I captured clear images of his face. Meanwhile, Daphne went to the guest room and packed her belongings in garbage bags, as her suitcases were apparently in the master bedroom closet. Once the man completed his tasks, he shut down the computer and informed Daphne of his departure. She finished packing and left the premises at 3:56 p.m. Shortly after the recording ceased, Harry contacted me. "You all right, Kenneth? Head home and act normally. I suspect they will involve the police tonight or tomorrow, so be prepared for an inspector's visit. Obtaining a search warrant takes a few hours, so anticipate their arrival tomorrow." Could I get arrested? I inquired. It's a possibility. If it happens, maintain silence. Don't answer any questions. I've already reached out to Stephen Lindsay, a reliable criminal defense lawyer. I've shared all pertinent information, including the recordings. He assures me this will be the easiest case of the year, Harry assured. I provided Harry with a code to control my alarm system recording in case of an arrest. After some more discussion, we concluded our conversation. I felt extremely anxious as I drove home. The evening passed without any police visits, calls from Daphne, or unpleasant messages from Kramer. I made myself a sandwich and ate while watching TV. Although tempted to inform my parents about the situation, I decided to wait until the storm had passed. Explaining computer system tampering and cloud-stored videos to my mother seemed futile and likely to cause unnecessary worry. The next day, while I was at the store, I got another alert saying there was an intruder in my house. Following the same steps as before, I quickly messaged Harry and checked my security system. The police had entered my place and were trying to turn off the alarm. They seemed to have done it successfully because I lost communication. Harry told me he saw what happened and sent the images to Stephen Lindsay. About an hour later, 2 officers came to my shop and arrested me. They handcuffed me and took me away in a police car. They told me my rights and started asking questions, but I chose not to answer. When we got to the station, they took my phone and wallet and put me in a cell with 5 others. There wasn't much talking, everyone stared at the floor tiles. After about 3 hours, a guard took me to a meeting room to see my lawyer. What's going on?" I asked the guard. I hadn't told anyone who my lawyer was. The guard didn't say anything and left me alone in the room.
10 minutes later, Derek Kramer Walkedin.
He had a big grin on his face and sat across from me without saying anything. I stared back at him, saying nothing. After he was satisfied with establishing his dominance, he finally spoke. "Now do you understand the seriousness of the situation?" I stayed quiet. "I asked you a question, Morrison. Answer me, you insignificant bug." Again, I didn't respond. "It's your word against mine, Morrison. A carpenter versus one of the top lawyers in the city. Can you guess what will happen?" he asked, still smirking. Then he got up and left the room. "Okay, it seems like you need some time to process what I've told you. Let's meet again tomorrow morning to discuss further," he said before leaving the room. I was taken back to the cell, now with only 4 others. Later that day, another person came to see me. I was brought back to the same meeting room where a tall blond man was waiting for me with a stern expression and a no-nonsense demeanor. He stood up as I entered. "Good afternoon, Kenneth. Nice to meet you. I'm Stephen Lindsay. You can call me Stephen. Harry got in touch with me earlier today, saying he had trouble reaching you. Given the situation, we figured you might have been arrested and brought here." I recounted all the events of the day, including the unsettling visit from Derek Kramer. Stephen seemed shocked, but he stayed silent. "Okay, you'll be in front of a judge tomorrow morning. Expect a high bail, but don't worry, Harry will take care of it. I know tonight will be tough, but stay strong. Both Harry and I are here for you. In the meantime, keep refusing to answer their questions. I've officially taken on your case, and I'll make sure Kramer doesn't bother you again." The next day, I appeared before the judge on charges of possessing illegal material involving children, maintaining my plea of not guilty. Bail was set, and I was released later that afternoon. I was restricted from leaving the city or contacting my soon-to-be ex-wife, Derek Kramer, or anyone from their office, but I could work in my shop. My phone and wallet were returned, and Stephen took me for a late lunch, where we continued our conversation. I didn't say much at the police station yesterday because I was worried about confidentiality. But after making some calls and doing research, I found out some interesting things about Derek Kramer. Let me give you some reassuring information. Firstly, getting a search warrant takes time, and only after that can they review the found material and get an arrest warrant. In your case, you were brought in before they finished searching your house. Secondly, despite the restrictions on contacting me or Harry, Derek Kramer was allowed to see you. This strongly suggests that the whole thing was planned, which is definitely illegal. But Harry said Kramer has influence over many judges, I pointed out. And not all of them, he replied with a wink. You can't make so many friends without making some enemies. I have no clue what I'll find at home. I hope my wife and her scheming partner didn't take everything. Don't worry about that. Harry went to your place right after the police left, reactivated the system, and set it to record again. No one came. I went back to the shop to get my car and then went home for a much-needed shower. The architect had left a message confirming the updated plan had been approved by the client. This was good news, as it meant I could go back to work the next day and keep my mind occupied. When I got home, I found a mess. Every inch had been searched. Besides the tampered computer, I knew they wouldn't find anything incriminating. As I cleaned up, I couldn't help but cry for the first time. Just a week ago, I was a happy man in what I thought was a stable marriage. Now I was a suspect in a crime, facing divorce, and manipulated by my wife's boss. What had I done to deserve this? At least there were no reporters bothering me. They were probably busy with a newly discovered multi-billion-dollar hole in public finances to care about someone like Kenneth. Towards the end of the following week, Stephen finally contacted me with some big news. All charges against me had been dropped. It seemed the assigned inspector, who was particularly sensitive to blackmail issues, wasn't someone to mess with. Despite Derek Kramer's attempts, the inspector swiftly filed charges against him for blackmail, evidence fabrication, and possessing illegal materials with children. As for Daphne, she would be facing conspiracy accusations related to these crimes. Shortly after talking to Stephen, Harry called and invited me to dinner that evening. While on my way to Harry's, Claudia Milton, my family law attorney, reached out to me. Kenneth, Daphne's lawyer, called and said she's ready to sign the divorce papers without changes, but with one condition. She wants a private hour-long meeting with you, suggesting it could be at my office. Although meeting Daphne was the last thing I wanted, I thought it might speed up the divorce process, so I agreed to Claudia's plan. The evening with Harry and Christine was a much-needed break, the first relaxing one in 2 weeks. Christine had prepared a delicious meal of coconut shrimp and rice, which left me feeling peaceful upon returning home. The meeting with Daphne was set for the following Wednesday, and despite being the sufferer in this scheme, I couldn't shake off my nerves. When I arrived, Claudia advised me in her office, Kenneth, I'm not sure about her intentions, but I must warn you she's facing criminal accusations. Don't give her any ammunition. Be careful of what you say. We can't search her for recording devices, so she might be recording you. Okay, thanks for the heads up, I replied. Then I was led into a private meeting room where Daphne was already sitting. I expected to encounter the same spiteful and arrogant Daphne I'd known, but she seemed broken. Despite feeling compassionate, memories of her questionable interactions with Kramer quickly dispelled any sympathy I had. Thank you for meeting with me, Kenneth, as she began, her tears flowing. Daphne expressed regret and apologized to Kenneth for her past behavior, admitting she had been under Derek Kramer's influence. She mentioned feeling awakened upon learning about the dropped charges against Kenneth and the potential accusations they might face. This realization led her to feel deep remorse and shame, especially considering the insignificant nature of the incident. For the next 30 minutes, she continued to reflect on her behavior without asking for any information or probing me further. I understand it's over between us, Kenneth. If I were you, I'd seek a divorce too. I don't blame you for ending things. I've quit my job. I made it clear to Derek Kramer I never want to speak to him again. I've gone back to my parents' house and confessed everything. They're furious with me. Let's just say the atmosphere at home is anything but warm and welcoming. I looked at her quietly. Frankly, there was no smart comeback to all of this. She had created her own mess, and now she had to deal with the consequences. The months and maybe even years ahead will be tough for me, Kenneth. I'm not sure what life holds for me. My only hope is that eventually, after everything settles, we might have a chance to be friends. That's a long shot, Daphne, very long. We'll see how it goes. Best of luck. I got up and left the room. Part of me still cared for her, but reconciliation was out of the question. Despite wanting revenge initially, circumstances had already made her miserable. She had learned her lesson, and there was no need for more punishment. Daphne made a deal by cooperating fully with authorities against Derek Kramer, which led her to move to another city. After that, I lost contact with her. When allegations against Kramer became public, 2 other men came forward accusing him of blackmail. Kramer got a 12-year jail term. As the police had recordings of all my interactions with him, my testimony wasn't needed. After Kramer was convicted, I sued him and what was left of his firm, and I got a $2 million settlement, with a good chunk going to Harry. Despite pretending to be outraged, I was happy to reward Harry for his invaluable help. My company is doing well, and I'm close to acquiring a specialty door manufacturer, which will improve our operations. With 6 employees who feel like family, I'm content. Harry and Christine invited me to a barbecue a few days after my divorce was finalized. There I met Christine's younger sister, Kathy, and we hit it off immediately. We've been dating for a few weeks, and we'll see where it leads. Several weeks after settling the case against CBH and Kramer, I visited Kramer in jail, making sure the guard made him stay for our chat. I smirked as he entered, starting with a taunt. "What's up, cuck?" Kramer tried to leave, but the guard made him sit and listen. Ignoring his insults, I casually mentioned, "Oh, interesting. Preemptive strike. Heard your wife Jessica filed for divorce. Maybe I should ask her out for dinner and give her a memorable night." Furious, Kramer snapped, "You rogue if you do that." I cut him off. "Save your spit, idiot. I've done that already. Her hummingbird tattoo on her upper left thigh is quite lovely, isn't it, cuck?" He turned beet red. He was about to threaten me again, but then he realized it wouldn't help anyway. I wasn't there to talk about Jessica. I just wanted to let him know he's a fool who needs reminders of his own foolishness. Threatening a man in his own home and outlining consequences if he doesn't comply isn't exactly smart, is it? Even a carpenter would see that. Let's say this time you're the one left in the dust. I laughed while he simmered with anger. "Oh, and didn't you say certain materials were illegal for a simple man like me, but fine for a powerful figure like yourself? Your power amazes me. Perhaps it's the jumpsuit. It suits you." Kramer was so mad he seemed close to a breakdown. "Before I go, I have something Jessica and Daphne thought you might find enlightening." I handed him a folded paper. He unfolded it and looked at it. What the hell is this?" he asked. "Exactly," I chuckled. "It's a depiction of a female gender organ, commonly referred to as a private part." I pointed to a spot on the drawing. "They wanted you to know that's the arousal point."